Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today I'm interviewing a person who calls herself just ordinary. She's a regulatory administrator that telecommutes. She's lived in places like Dubuque, Iowa, and California, Colorado as well. And she's attended college in St. Paul, Minnesota, and has a degree in theology. I want to welcome to my show Tina Hessel.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
You know, Tina, I am very curious now what you're going to talk about, because I've never had a show like yours. I have lived also in many of the places you're talking about, and I've experienced many political shows, but this is a new show that I'm starting because it's kind of breaking news. So I want you to tell me what happened on February 1st, 2016 at your polling place in Dubuque, Iowa.
Oh, sure. So in Iowa, instead of having an election, we caucus. And usually it's a very organized situation. You will hear speeches from people representing the various candidates. In this case, it was for the Republican candidates. And then you are assigned rooms where each of the candidates are represented. And if you're going to vote for that candidate, you go to that room, and then you all, whoever is, say, for example, you're for Ted Cruz, you'd go to his room. If you're for Donald Trump, you'd go to his room. And you all would vote, and then the votes would be counted in front of the precinct captain, or the room captain in this case. And then the votes would be tallied. The votes that you wrote down, or your ballot, would be put into an envelope, and the number of votes would be added on the front of the envelope. But in this case, it was very unique. My precinct in Dubuque is Precinct 2, and so I was assigned to drive out to Peosta, Iowa, which is about 10 miles from Dubuque, and we met in a big room at the Peosta Community Center. And so I went in, and I brought my ex-husband with me, actually, because he had never caucused before in his whole life, and he's 58 years old. So I talked him into coming along because he wanted to support Donald Trump. And so we went in, and there's people that sign you in, and I asked them if they would like to see my ID, and the lady that I spoke with said, no, go ahead and just sign your name by your address on my paper, which I was quite stunned because anybody could have signed my name and said I was Tina Hessel. So then she directed us to the various tables. Since I'm Precinct 2, she directed me to the Precinct 2 table, and she directed Jeff to Precinct 20 because that's where he is. Mm-hmm. So we proceeded to sit down. We thought, well, we'll just sit together until the proceedings actually start. And so at 7 o'clock, we began the caucus. And we heard the speeches, and I was waiting for us to be assigned rooms, but they told us we all would have to go to our various tables, and there were over 10 precincts represented in that big room. So we were all in the same room, and there was probably about 2,000 people in the room. And you can hear yourself even think. And they were not expecting such a huge turnout, which I was quite surprised myself. But so we went to our tables, and I'm short. I'm only like 5'3", so I was kind of towards the back. They didn't have enough seats for everybody. It was standing room only. And so I was in the crowd around Precinct 2's table, and we were trying to get our precinct leader to talk louder. We couldn't hear any instructions he was giving us. And so he started to hand out ballots to various people in the crowd, and they were passing the ballots around. And I found that very interesting because anyone could have kept a bunch of ballots and voted and handed them back in. There was no method to the madness in the room at all. And not only that, but when you did vote, like since I was towards the back of Precinct 2's crowd, I passed my ballot back up. I don't even know if it got counted, actually, because the ballots were getting thrown on the table. And when you were done submitting your ballot, or ballot, who knows, you could have easily went to another table and voted, because there were so many people there, and there was no way to know. There was no one monitoring the activities going on in the room. And so, say, for instance, I voted at Precinct 2. If I wanted to, I could have moved over where Jeff was and voted at his table, because nobody would have known.
Hold on, Tina. I want the audience to know what a caucus is, because not everybody has ever attended a caucus, nor do they really know what it is. And I also know that at this particular caucus, they flipped a coin. Now, what's that about?
Oh, that was in the Democratic caucuses. That they, I guess there was a tie between Hillary and Bernie Sanders, and to decide who won in the Democratic caucus, they are to flip a coin. And they flipped the coin 6 times, and each time it came up Hillary, and that's how they decided she was the winner of the caucus, even though Bernie Sanders quite possibly could have had more votes.
So does that sound legitimate or serious? Because, we're thinking that these people are running for president, and yet they flip a coin, and in your case...
Exactly.
Yeah, and they sign everything. Now, again, please define the word caucus for our audience.
Well, it's a gathering of your friends and neighbors, basically, and it's a tradition, actually, in Iowa, where it's a gathering of individuals, and that's where you vote for the highest office in the land. And I am just shocked that you could just flip a coin. That seems so flipped. I can't pardon the pun. I mean, this is such an important thing that I don't think flipping a coin is very appropriate. And also, in my case, I don't think it was handled correctly. I asked a friend of mine who went to another caucus at another precinct or a polling place, and she said you did it the usual way, where you hear your speeches and then you split off into a room for whoever you're supporting. But at my polling place, they didn't do that. Everybody was in the room, and it was crazy. It was nuts.
Now, how many people were in the room?
About 2,000 people.
2,000 people. So it must have been chaotic.
It was. As a matter of fact, I was looking for Jeff to see where he was at, and he goes, "Did you know people could vote more than once here?" And I said, "Yeah, it looks like it," because we could see people moving to other tables. So, it's just a little bit bizarre. He said he'll never go to another caucus again.
Oh, wow. Now, again, I want our audience to understand how powerful the caucus is. Is it a way to really determine who's going to become president, or is it just a formality?
No, it's in Iowa, and I believe it's Nevada, and I think Hawaii. I'm not for sure. There's only a few states who still select their candidates this way. And we don't do it for every election, just the presidential election. Say like for senators and congressmen, we don't caucus. We just have a voting booth and we go vote. But for president, they've always done this caucus where people would gather in firehouses, schools, wherever, and that's how they voted.
Now, did you contact anyone about the activities at the caucus? Because you sound very frustrated and very angry, and you deserve to be, because it's not fun to watch people vote several times and create this sort of illegitimate kind of opportunity. So did you contact one?
I absolutely did. I contacted the Iowa Secretary of State, and I did receive an email back from them, and they said since it's a caucus and not an actual election, go to a voting booth, there's nothing they can do about it, which that I found that quite interesting. Mm-hmm. And then I contacted the Iowa Republican Committee, and I've not received any feedback from them whatsoever. I also contacted Reince Priebus with the National Republican National Committee, and I've not heard anything back from him at all.
Now, what do you attribute to that to?
Well, I'm not real sure. I think people are so angry that they want an outsider, and I agree with them. I'm just going to say right out, I am a proponent for Donald Trump. I voted for him. Hopefully it got counted. But a lot of us want to see someone like Donald Trump. And the Republican committee or whoever, they're old school. You know, they want to see someone like Jeb Bush or someone like that nominated. They don't want to give an outsider a chance. And it appears to me, just through what I see in the media and what I see comments from other Republicans that have been a Republican a long time, that have been in Congress a long time, that they don't want an outsider like Dr. Ben Carson or Donald Trump, who possibly, I feel like Donald Trump's a breath of fresh air, and Dr. Carson actually. I mean, they're bringing some really good ideas, and Donald Trump particularly, he's speaking what we all are feeling. Well, maybe not all, but a majority of us, I feel, are feeling.
Now, wait a minute. Let me interrupt you here. Now, you said you're for Donald Trump, and you're entitled to be for anybody you want to run for president. Now, what is it about Donald Trump? Don't you realize that Donald Trump has very little experience in foreign affairs and various other things, but still, why Donald Trump?
Well, I like his stance on ISIS. You know, he said he'd blow the blanket out of them. I think we need to do that. He has a good tax plan. He's a businessman. He's got a lot of business experience, and I think we need that type of person in office, because so far what we've had hasn't worked very well. Mm-hmm. So I'm willing to give him or Dr. Carson a chance, you know, just to get things turned around. And I really believe him when he says, because I've been to two of his rallies, and he stood right in front of me because I was always in the front row. When he says, I want to make America great again, I actually believe what he's saying, you know. And again, he says what we're all feeling. And I think that's what's attracting all of us to him.
Mm-hmm. Now, you also mentioned Ben Carson. Now, again, how much experience does Ben Carson have in politics?
Well, he doesn't, actually, which is probably good. because the people who have experience have really messed things up. Barack Obama didn't have any experience either. He was a first-time senator, and he didn't have any experience, and look what he's done. Mm-hmm. So, and I feel like your president doesn't make all the decisions by himself. Mm-hmm. He has to surround himself with very good advisors. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Donald Trump in particular would do that. You know, he's got very good connections with people, and he would be able to rally people around his causes.
Yeah. Now, when you saw Donald Trump in front of you, did you ask him any questions about what he's thinking?
Well, the first time I saw him, it wasn't a town hall format, it was a rally. And he had Ann Coulter open up for him, so she spoke, and then he spoke. So there wasn't any questions. He did hold a press conference prior to the rally, so he met with the press at that time, but he didn't have questions. And then when he came here a week ago, this past Saturday, he had a very tight schedule because he had to go to like 6 different places. So he flew into our airport and he spoke for 45 minutes, and it was an extraordinary speech. But he didn't have time for questions either because he had to get to his next place.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell the audience about some of the things he spoke about? Because I'm curious what everybody is so excited about in your neck of the woods.
Oh, okay. Well, he reiterated his stance about ISIS, and it's true. You know, these people are killing Christians and killing children and taking little girls as slaves. And he spoke about dealing with those nefarious people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to call them bad names, but they're bad people.
Mm-hmm.
And so he reiterated that. He talked a little bit about his opponents, which was, you know, that's always kind of humorous because they all talk about each other
mm-hmm.
like they're the worst people on earth, but then I'm sure they're, you know, I think they really like each other. I really do. Maybe some of them don't, but
mm-hmm.
who knows? But he talked a little bit about that. He talked about his tax reforms. What else did he talk about? I'm trying to think, because he talked for a good 35 minutes.
Yeah.
He talked about the ethanol, because Iowa is, as you may or may not know, is a big producer of corn,
mm-hmm.
and ethanol is made from Iowa corn. And so, like, a person like Ted Cruz had a vote in Congress where, I'm not sure exactly what the vote was, but he voted against Iowa and our corn, and our governor even spoke out against that. Right. And he asked us to follow Donald Trump, so...
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Now, Tina, this is also something I want to know about. You know, you said that you're an ordinary citizen who happened to be at this caucus. I bet that you've spoken to many people in Iowa, in your town, and I want to get a feeling for what people are thinking. Are they educated enough? Do you think people know enough about each candidate? Do you think that they know about politics and how very, very serious it is to know and be educated?
Actually, and it's funny you say that because one of my friends, he's a younger guy, he's probably about 22 years old, we got into it a little bit before he went to the caucus because he goes, well, I'm going to support Ted Cruz. And I said, why would you do that? And I said, give me a reason why you're going to support him. And he had no clue why he was going to support him. The only thing he could tell me was, well, he's Christian.
Oh.
I said, well, how do you know he's Christian? Well, he says he is.
So I think you're telling me that people are just not educated enough about the presidents, the people who are running for president.
Exactly, and I encouraged him to really evaluate what stances people have, and I said, why wouldn't you vote for Donald Trump? And he quoted a scripture to me. He said, well, the love of money is the root of all evil. And I said, how do you know he loves money? Just because he's a billionaire. I said, do you realize how much he gives to charity?
Ah, that's interesting. Do you know?
Yeah, he just gave $100,000 2 weeks ago to our veterans here in the state of Iowa for the dogs that they train for vets that have post-traumatic stress disorder. We train dogs in Iowa, and they go and they're guide dogs for the veterans that have post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't see anyone else doing that, and I know Jeb Bush is a millionaire, so
yeah.
And there was another instance I was reading when we were discussing the caucus even months or weeks before, where he was traveling one day in his limo, actually, and someone had broken down. There was a couple in a truck or something, and so his limo driver pulled over, and they assisted this guy and his wife. And Donald Trump asked him, "Hey, what can I do, to help you guys?" And he said, "Oh, nothing." He goes, "Just send my wife some flowers. That would really make her day." And turned out he did more than that. He paid off their house mortgage.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So, for my friend to say, well, the love of money is the root of all evil, well, that may be true in some instances, but he's just a giving person. He gives he may love money. I'm sure he does. Who wouldn't if you're a billionaire? But he does good things with his money as well.
Right. Now, here's another question I have for you. If you had a choice to do anything in politics, would you ever run? Because you seem to know so much about it and you're interested. So why not consider being involved in politics, such as running for House of Representatives? Does that sound unreal, or do you think it's possible for a woman like you?
Oh, I think it's possible for anybody to run for whatever office they wish to. I've been interested in politics since I was a little girl because my mom and dad were die-hard Democrats. If you live in Dubuque, Iowa, that's pretty much how you grow up, as a Democrat. Thankfully, it changed since then, but I've been involved in politics. I remember, when I was 8 years old, I caused a riot on the school bus because we were arguing over the presidential election. I had to go sit up front in the school bus. That was so funny.
Now, what about young people? Don't you think it would be to your advantage and to everybody's advantage to talk to, say, college kids or kids in high school, because you can explain what you experienced with this caucus situation and get young people involved? Oh, yeah, that would be great. I'm not sure how much in our town that would be allowed, but I like I said, I reached out to this one fellow who's about in his early 20s when he was going to caucus, excuse me, and he was at the same precinct or the polling place that we were, so, and I wanted to ask him after we found out how Ted Cruz kind of messed around with the election a little bit, what he thought of his Christian friend Ted Cruz now. Now, wait a minute. Explain what you mean by that. How did he fool around?
Well, apparently he set out, or he had someone. He says he didn't, but I'm thinking otherwise. But anyway, he had someone send out a text that made it sound like Ben Carson had left the race at 7 o'clock, right when the caucuses were starting, and these tweets were going out. Even a representative, congressman from Iowa, Steve King, he was saying, well, since Ben Carson has left the race, your votes need to go to Ted Cruz. And so, that was a big kind of deal, I think. And then he sent out, I didn't receive anything, but he did send out these letters to voters and kind of shame them, saying you haven't voted in so long, and that kind of stuff. That really gets down to dirty politics, I think. So
right. Now, here's another thing that I want to know is if you have a chance to change things, how would you do it?
Well, I would put Americans first. It seems like now, under the current administration, especially Christian Americans, they're being pushed aside, and everything's so politically correct. And I'm not saying we have to be going around offending everyone, but it just seems like right now there's so much division, and if I could change anything, I would like to unify everyone. I think that's so important. And I think and Donald Trump, I agree with him on this too. He even said it in the debate on Saturday night. We don't respect our police anymore. Yeah, there's some bad apples. There's bad apples even where I work, or where everybody works. But that doesn't mean the whole organization is bad. And we need to respect our police and our military and take care of our vets. They gave so much for us, and we should be willing to support them and take care of them.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you were had a chance to ask one of the candidates a question, or all the candidates, what question would you ask?
That's a good one, because there's so many good questions you could ask.
Mm-hmm. Well, give us a couple.
I think one of my main questions I would ask, how, as you as President of the United States, would unify the people of the United States? I think that's a good starting point. Mm-hmm. How, because I'm sure we get a variety of answers.
Right. And if just put yourself in place of one of those candidates, how would you answer that?
Well, I think I would answer it by saying that we all are one, yet we are different. That doesn't matter. We come from different backgrounds, different cultures, and that's what makes us so great. And it's time to start, caring about one another and, backing up each other and supporting one another. Mm-hmm. Easier said than done, I'm sure, but there's got to be a way to bring everybody together. Yes. And I think if you get the right person in office, that you're able to do that. I don't remember JFK at all, but even though he was a Democrat, I understood that he brought people together. Mm-hmm. And I remember Ronald Reagan, he brought everybody together. He reached across the aisle, mm-hmm. to Tiff O'Neill, and they were great friends, and they got things done. And so instead of fighting with each other so much, unified. Let's try to work it out together. Yeah, we have differences, but I bet amongst those differences we have a lot in common. We have common ground, and just stand on that common ground and work to get things done.
Mm-hmm. Now, getting back to the issue of caucuses, what would you like to see happen for the future?
I would like us to do away with the caucuses. I don't like what I saw at the last one, and it makes me wonder if in the past there weren't some shenanigans going on. I would like us to go back to being able to vote as a primary state. I know that probably would mean we weren't first. It's a big deal to everyone that we're first in the nation to vote. But as the Secretary of State indicated to me, really, big deal. You're not a primary. You're not holding a primary election, so you don't count. And which I don't understand all that. Our votes count, but the caucuses, they can't do anything about it. So I would like to see us revert to doing a primary election.
Mm-hmm. So if they do have caucuses in the future, will you attend?
Oh, I'll attend, but I think I'll be a little more watchful, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I always like my guests to have the last word. So, Tina, what would you like to say to our audience?
Just study out your candidates and get out there and support them and vote for them. And just do your patriotic duty. People have died for that right for you to get out and vote. So it's very important that you do this and we change the direction that our country's going into.
Well, my guest today has been Tina Hessel, and Tina, she calls herself an ordinary person, but you see, she's the kind of person who we need in this country because she cares, number one. She's educated about politics, and that's her decision and her choice. And also, she's seen so many things that don't seem just sort of right. So I want to thank you, Tina, for letting all the information about what you experienced in the caucus. And, you need to kind of pass the word around and let people know that they have a voice. So, Tina, thank you for being on the Susan Brender Show.
Thank you, Susan, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Susan Brender Show.